Hello, sports fans. Welcome to Spruce Sports Central. Today, we're going to be going over my college football playoff predictions. So, as you can see, I have the bracket up over here, and we will be going over my college football playoff predictions all the way from the first round to the national championship. But before we get into my predictions, a couple of quick things. First, my record on the season. I had a 4-2 record in conference championship week, and that brings my record on the season to 212-53. And also, I'll be having a live watch party for every single college football playoff game, where you guys get to see my live reactions, thoughts, everything, all as it happens. So be sure to subscribe, turn notifications so don't miss that. But beginning with round one, we have Clemson at Texas. So Clemson is technically the worst team in the playoff based on their ranking, and they only made the college football playoff because they won the ACC. But this is a good Clemson team. Offensively, they're scoring 35.5 points per game, although they face a very good Texas defense that is arguably the best defense in the country, allowing 12.5 points per game, which is second fewest. And on the other side, Texas is good offensively, scoring 33.6 points per game, and they face a solid Clemson defense that's allowing 22.3 points per game. Although Clemson does struggle to stop the run, allowing 150 rushing yards per game. But I think Texas is the better team here in this matchup. Their defense will contain a pretty good Clemson offense, and I think the Texas offense will play well, and I've got Texas beating Clemson by a score of 27-17. Next game, we have Tennessee at Ohio State. So this is a really interesting matchup. Both these teams are 10-2, and they have great defenses. Offensively for Tennessee, they're scoring 37.3 points per game, and they have a great run game led by running back Dylan Sampson, and they're averaging 232 rushing yards per game. But they now match up against a great Ohio State defense that is the nation's best scoring defense, allowing just 10.9 points per game, and they're also great against the run, allowing just 96 rushing yards per game and 2.8 yards per carry. Then on the flip side, Ohio State is scoring 35.5 points per game, and like Tennessee, they also play a very good run game, but they're a bit more well-rounded on the offensive side of the ball. But they match up against a Tennessee defense that ranks 5th, allowing 13.9 points per game, and they're 4th in yards allowed per game at 278. But this is definitely the toughest first-round matchup to predict, and I think this is going to be a lower-scoring game considering how good both defenses are. I can definitely understand picking Ohio State because they're home, but that doesn't seem to be the greatest strategy, at least for this game, because it seems there's been rumors that Tennessee fans might take over the horseshoe. But I am still going to take Ohio State to get the win. I think their defense is a little bit better, plus their offense is more well-rounded, and I'm going to take Ohio State to get the win, 21-17. Moving on, we have SMU at Penn State. This is another really tough game to predict. SMU, they're a great team sitting at 11-2, and Penn State also at 11-2. Now, you look at this game, you say Penn State, they're probably the more talented team, and they should win. Now, that's probably true, but James Franklin also can't win a big game, as during his time at Penn State, he is just 12-27 against ranked teams, and 3-17 against top 10 teams. But I really do think this game can go either way. Penn State is scoring 33.6 points per game, and they have a great run game, rushing for 202 yards per game. But they face an SMU defense that's allowing 20.8 points a game, although SMU is great against the run, allowing just 93.4 rushing yards per game and 2.7 yards per carry. Now, SMU can get hurt through the air, allowing 232 passing yards per game, and while I'm not the biggest fan of Penn State's passing attack, I do think they could look to take advantage in that area. Then on the flip side, SMU is a lead offensively, scoring 38.5 points per game, and they have a very balanced attack, passing for 267 yards per game and rushing for a little over 175 per game. And they go against a great Penn State defense that is allowing 16.4 points per game, and they're great against both the pass and the run. Although in their last time out in the Big Ten championship game against Oregon, they weren't that good, allowing 45 points. But this is a very tough game to predict, and I'm actually going to take SMU to get the upset win. I think their offense is good enough to score, even against a tough defense, and I don't think Penn State will be able to keep up if they can't run the football effectively. So I'm going to take SMU to knock Penn State out of the college football playoff in the first round. James Franklin continues to not be able to win the big game, and SMU wins by a score of 27-22. And our final first round matchup, we have Indiana at Notre Dame. So Indiana, they've been one of the most surprising teams so far this season, and getting to this point is extremely impressive for a team picked to finish near the bottom of the Big Ten. But Indiana, they're good offensively, scoring 43.3 points per game, which ranks second in the country. But they don't face an elite Notre Dame defense that is the third best scoring defense in the country, allowing just 13.6 points per game. Then on the flip side, Notre Dame is also great offensively, as they're scoring 39.8 points per game, which is third best in the country, and they have a great run game, rushing for 224 yards per game. And Notre Dame, they match up against an Indiana defense that is very good, as they're allowing 14.7 points per game, and actually have the best rush defense in the country, allowing 70 rushing yards per game and 2.5 yards a carry. Now, Notre Dame does have a pretty good pass game, but they rely heavily on the run. And if Indiana can stop the Notre Dame run game, I definitely think they have a chance to win this game. But in the end, I think this is going to turn out to be similar to the Ohio State game for Indiana. I think they can keep this close for a while, but Notre Dame, they're the more talented team. I think the defensive line will keep Indiana quarterback Curtis Rourke under constant pressure, and Notre Dame uses a big second half to end up with the win, 34-16. Moving on to the quarterfinal matchups, and beginning in the Peach Bowl, we have Texas against Arizona State. So Arizona State, like Indiana, they were not expected to be in the college football playoff at the start of the season. But they've had a great year. They're 11-2, and they're Big 12 champions. Arizona State is very good offensively, scoring 33.1 points a game, and they rely heavily on the run with star running back Cam Scatabo, as he has run for 1,568 yards on the season and 19 scores. And Arizona State as a team, they're averaging 198 rushing yards per game. Although it could be tough for Cam Scatabo and the Arizona State run game, as they face a great Texas defense that is allowing just 106 rushing yards per game and 3.1 yards per carry. Now, outside of Scatabo, Arizona State has a solid passing game with quarterback Sam Leavitt, but Texas is also the top pass defense in the country. Now, Arizona State is solid on the defensive side of the ball, allowing 21.3 points per game. So I definitely think they can slow down a good Texas offense, but I just don't think Arizona State will do enough offensively if Texas shuts down Cam Scatabo. And I've got Texas getting the win here pretty convincingly by a score of 31-13. Moving on to the Rose Bowl, and that is Ohio State against Oregon. So this is a rematch of a regular season game where Oregon won 32-31, and that matchup was in Oregon. But then I'll play in the Rose Bowl, and this should be a great matchup. Oregon, they're scoring 35.9 points per game, and they have a great pass game, for 278 yards per game. Plus, their last time out against Penn State in the Big Ten championship game, they dropped 45. But then they'll face a great Ohio State defense that is allowing under 11 points per game, which is best in the country. Although in the first matchup, Oregon was able to score, as they scored 32. Then offensively for Ohio State, they're scoring 35.5 points per game, and they face an Oregon defense that's pretty good, allowing 17.8 points per game. Although Oregon has allowed a lot of points to good offenses, as they allowed 34 to Boise State, 31 to Ohio State, and 37 to Penn State. Now, I expect this game to be close, just like their first meeting, and I also think this is going to be on the higher scoring side, similar to their first meeting, even though both teams are good defensively. But I'm going to take Oregon to get the win. I think their offense is better. I think they'll be able to score even against a tough defense, and I've got Oregon advancing with a 30-26 win over Ohio State. Moving on to the Fiesta Bowl, and we have SMU against Boise State. So this is a really interesting match. Imagine telling someone at the beginning of the season, SMU and Boise State would play each other in the quarterfinals of the college football playoff. Sounds crazy, but I think this is going to be a really good game. Both these teams are great offensively. As Boise State, they're the fourth highest scoring team in the country, scoring 39.1 points per game, and their offense is led by Heisman runner-up Ashton Jeanty, who's run for 2,497 yards and 29 touchdowns on the season. And Boise State as a team is averaging 250 rushing yards per game. But they face an SMU defense allowing 20.8 points a game, and they're great against the run, allowing 93 rushing yards per game. And their run defense is a big reason I have SMU beating Penn State in the first round. Then on the flip side, SMU is great offensively. They're the sixth highest scoring offense in the country, averaging 38.5 points a game, and they face a pretty solid Boise State defense that's allowing roughly 22 points per game. But both these teams are great offensively, and I think that's going to lead this game to be a higher scoring, very good entertaining game. It's tough to predict because SMU has a good run defense, but isn't enough to stop Ashton Jeanty, and no one's run defense will be good enough to stop him. But I am going to take Boise State to get the win by a score of 34-31. But this game's a true coin flip, and I think if we get this matchup, it's one of the most underrated matchups of the playoffs. Next game, we have the Sugar Bowl, and that is Notre Dame against Georgia. So Georgia is 11-2, and they're SEC champions, although they will likely be playing this game without quarterback Carson Beck, as he got hurt in the SEC championship game, and that means backup Gunnar Stockton will get the start. And it's definitely not going to be easy for Gunnar Stockton to, one, make his first start in the college football playoff, but he's doing so against arguably the best defense in the country. As Notre Dame, they're the third best scoring defense, allowing just 13.6 points per game, and they're also the third best defense against the pass. Now, Gunnar Stockton was solid in the second half against a good Texas defense in the SEC championship game, but I don't think he'll play a great game against a very good Notre Dame defense. On the flip side, we have a really interesting matchup. Notre Dame has an elite rushing attack, averaging 224 rushing yards per game, but like Indiana, Georgia is very good against the run, although not quite that good. But Georgia, they're allowing 3.7 yards per carry. And Georgia, they've been good against the run, although they have struggled to stop rushing quarterbacks, as they've allowed 117 rushing yards to Jalen Milroe. They allowed 50 rushing yards to Jackson Dart, who's running on one good ankle, and they allowed 110 rushing yards to Haynes King. Now, Notre Dame has a great dual threat quarterback in Riley Leonard, and he has run for 721 yards and 14 touchdowns this season. And even if Notre Dame can't run the ball that effectively, I think Leonard can definitely do enough as a passer. But I have Notre Dame beating Georgia in the Sugar Bowl by a score of 24-10. I don't think Georgia will be able to get much going against a great defense with their backup quarterback, and I think what Riley Leonard can do as a runner is a major difference for the Notre Dame offense. I've got Notre Dame beating Georgia and advancing to the semifinals. Next game, we have the Cotton Bowl, and that is Texas against Oregon. So this is really interesting. These are two really good teams, but another really interesting thing that could be overlooked about this game is it's in the Cotton Bowl in Texas. So that makes this really interesting. But Oregon, they're great offensively, scoring about 36 points a game. But as I've said a billion times in this video, Texas is elite defensively. Then on the flip side, both teams are also very good, as Texas is scoring 33.6 points a game, and Oregon is allowing 17.8 points a game. Although Oregon, when they have played their fair share of good defenses, they have been able to score. As when they've played Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan, they've scored 32, 38, and 45. So Oregon, they've proved they can score against good defenses, and I think they can do it again against Texas. And while Texas is pretty good offensively, I don't think they're quite good enough to keep up with Oregon, and I have Oregon beating Texas and advancing to the national championship game and winning by a score of 31-27. And moving to the other semifinal, and that is Boise State against Notre Dame. So Boise State in the semifinal is probably not something a lot of people saw coming. Boise State, they've been carried to this point by Ashton Jeanty, but he faces a great Notre Dame defense. And while Notre Dame's defense is one of the best in the country, their one defensive weakness is against the run, allowing 138 rushing yards per game. So that could be a problem. But I also think Notre Dame is good enough on the outside where they can stack the box, leave their corners on islands, and they can slow down Ashton Jeanty. Because Notre Dame, they have the third best pass defense in the country, allowing 157 passing yards per game. And yes, Boise State quarterback Maddox Madsen is pretty good, but I don't think he's good enough to beat an elite Notre Dame secondary. Then on the flip side, Notre Dame, they're great offensively, scoring just shy of 40 points a game. And Boise State's solid defensively, allowing about 22 points a game. But I don't think they'll be able to do enough defensively to slow down a good Notre Dame offense. And I've got Notre Dame beating Boise State to reach the national championship game, and they win by a score of 31-24. And then that brings us to the national championship game. We've got Oregon and Notre Dame. This is really interesting. Oregon, they would still be undefeated at this point. Obviously, if they lose, they're out. But they would be 15-0, seeking their first national championship ever, while Notre Dame is 14-1 and will be seeking their first national title since 1988, sorry. But Oregon, they're great offensively, scoring 35.9 points per game, but Notre Dame's defense is elite, allowing 13.6 points per game. But on the flip side is where I think this game is decided. Notre Dame's offense against Oregon's defense. Notre Dame is scoring 39.8 points a game, and they are great running the ball, averaging 224 rushing yards per game, and they match up against a Oregon defense that is allowing 17.8 points per game, and they've been pretty good against the run this season, allowing 126 rushing yards per game. But Oregon, they've also been hurt on the ground their fair share this year, as against Boise State, they allowed 221 rushing yards. Ohio State ran for 141, Purdue, who's absolutely awful, ran for 208, and Penn State ran for nearly 300, as they ran for 297 in the Big Ten championship game. And because of that, I think Notre Dame is going to be able to run the football effectively in this game. And because of that, I think they'll be able to score a good amount, I think their defense is good enough to contain a good Oregon offense, and I have Notre Dame beating Oregon in the national championship game by a score of 27-24. And I also meant to go through and calculate all the points that are going to be scored in the playoff, but I forgot to do that. But those are my 2024-2025 college football playoff predictions. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to like this video, subscribe, turn notifications so you don't miss any of their upcoming videos. I do my best to post as often as possible. Be sure to check out the community tab of my channel, where you guys can vote on who you think will win the national championship and some of this week's big games. But thank you guys for watching. Be sure to like this video, subscribe, turn notifications. I do my best to post as often as possible, and I will see you in the next video.